General Secretary Mick Cash, who very kindly stepped in at the last minute for Bob. So, Mick, if you'd like to...
Well, thanks very much, Pat, and it's a pleasure to be in Birmingham again. Can I just say, Bob does sends his apologies. I spoke to him earlier on today and he said, you can be me tonight, and I said, no way, Bob, because you saw Bob at 12 o'clock today as I did. He had shorts on, a t-shirt. Obviously, I'm not going to shave my hair for anybody, and trainers on. So I said, no, Bob, I'll be me. I hope I ain't second best, but it is a pleasure to come up here and talk about what is a very, very important subject. I was reading the command paper. Well, I started the command paper. It's a strange sort of strange word for a major change to the railway network, as we know, which is the government's document that is going to lead to major changes for us in the railways. And it starts with a very strange, but a phrase that I could agree with, and I think everybody in this room would agree with. Britain's railways are at a turning point. And that's how this current government sees this. How they see McNulty, and how they see the command paper. Now, they're not my words, they're the government's words. And that's how they see McNulty being, what McNulty is, which, as Pat has said, was first started, actually under the last Labour government, as a value for money review. I mean, in that time, we've seen a change of government. We've now got a Tory-led government, a Tory-led government that's looking to repeat, in my view, the mistakes of the last government. Because if you remember, we have today to deal with a privatised network foisted upon us by the last Tory government. It was a few years back, but the legacy is where we are today, and the problems we've got today are purely and simply around the decision by John Major back in 1992 to privatise the rail network. Now, McNulty turned round and described in his report, and the report was last year. We're dealing with things this year and last year, and so you'll find me moving between McNulty and the command paper, and I hope I don't confuse you, but it's all the same result. McNulty turned round and said last year, the railways are expensive and fragmented. But what he failed to do was connect the reason why the railways are expensive and fragmented, and it's rail privatisation. It goes off at a tangent. So what we end up with is a proposal justified by what is now becoming widely, more and more widely, a discredited report from McNulty, which is going to have wide-ranging implications for the rail industry. And if we leave it unchallenged, it will be a disaster for passengers, it will be a disaster for the rail industry, and for the workers in it. And because the rail industry is such an important part of our country's economy, it would be a disaster for our country. And these are the sort of messages we've got to get across. This is how important this is. I was reading a paper recently, a journal today, and it had a poster done by our campaign about Beeching 50 years ago and McNulty now. And they're all about the same thing, cutting back, saving money, and we all know where they end up. So you can understand why we as a union, the RMT, is at the forefront of the campaign to oppose McNulty and ditch the command paper. And why do we want to do that? Well, we, as a trade union, and we're joined by many, many others, because there's a joint campaign, believe that it will fragment Network Rail, a company that brought in-house its maintenance in 2004, and it will take us back to the rail track days. And if you remember rail track days, it was where commercial interests dictated what happened on the railway. And we know where that led to. We know it led to disasters like Hatfield. Now, I'm an infrastructure worker, and as people in this room who know me, for those who don't, me and Pat have been on infrastructure for donkey's years. We don't want to go back to those days. No way do we want to go back to those days. But the danger in McNulty and the command paper is like father and son, actually. McNulty's father, son is command. Is that's where we're going to lead. We've already got examples of that happening. We've seen Network Rail enter into what they call a deep alliance. I don't know what that means, by the way. I've heard of deep rub and deep throat, but not deep alliance. Where Stagecoach, owned by Suter, you know, the big bus company, have created this alliance where they're going to jointly work together, manage both the track and the trains. Now, all that's going to be about, because Network Rail are heavily regulated today, all that's going to be about, in my view, is Stagecoach figuring out how they can cut costs to turn round, and I saw that, turn round to give it back to their shareholders. Because Network Rail don't have shareholders. Any money that they save, and they make a profit by the way, each year they make a profit, they have to reinvest back into the industry. Stagecoach don't do that. That goes back to Brian Suter and Co and all the other shareholders. So we're going to have a situation where we're going to see companies like Stagecoach outsourcing vital maintenance, cutting costs, all in order to maximise profits. It's going to be about a private shareholder once again determining the future of our railways. That's what one of the consequences of McNulty, father and son, command paper are going to be about. I was listening to Father and Son earlier on because I like, what's his name, the singer, Cat Stevens, but it's not like that, no way like that song. The other thing that's going to happen, it is about getting hold of Network Rail, but the other thing that's going to happen is to almost get less regulation in the industry. So they're going to create a lesser burden on the private sector, the train operating companies. Or put it the other way, they're going to create gold-plated franchises, licensed to print money. They could put less problems, less strictures on the train operating companies, how they run their services. And of course, that'll benefit the shareholders, but will it benefit us in the rail industry? Will it benefit passengers? Will it benefit the country? Because the relaxing in the controls that the government are looking to do will actually, in our view, benefit the taxpayers. And how will it do that? Well, they'll change how station opening times. They'll change the train stopping patterns. So will it guarantee, as it is today in some of the franchise agreements, you've got to have a train once an hour, once half hour. They won't be saying that in future. They'll be saying, well, let the trains decide, let the operators decide when we're going to stop a train, based on obviously what the maximum return they can get on it. They'll get rid of staff on platforms. They'll get rid of staff on trains. They're talking about driver-only operation as a default mechanism. Now, driver-only operation sounds a great phrase. It was created in the 80s when they talk about efficiency being the greatest thing. But for me, driver-only operation means guardless trains, a train without a guard, which we've always said as a trade union is unsafe. That's what they're looking at. And at a stroke, they're creating an environment where we believe it's unsafe. We're creating an insecurity for women, deterring the elderly and disabled. They will close ticket offices, which is going to worsen the service that so many see as vital actually. The first entry into the rail network is a ticket office. We're going to see a two-tier railway develop on regional railway services, as we believe they're going to remove train services and a multitude of regional services. So you're going to get a two-tier railway. You know, the main urban services, the intercity routes. You know, where there's money, they'll be running them up and down like nobody's business. But on the regional routes, the important feeder and tributaries into the rail network, you'll start to see a decline in the rail services. I mean, that was what Beecham wanted to do, and that's what Serpil wanted to do for those who remember the early 80s, and what Thatcher was sought to do if she'd have got her way many years ago. They're going to attack the jobs and conditions of rail workers. Vital jobs in our view, vital jobs for this country's economy. This industry employs well over 100,000, the rail industry, well over 100,000, what we consider to be green and environmentally friendly jobs. We believe that over 20,000 rail jobs are under threat. 650 ticket offices face full or partial closure. If the government gets its aim of reaching the target of £3.5 billion savings coming out of the Minority Review, that's his aim in the command paper, to cut back, take £3.5 billion off the costs, as they see it, of the rail industry. Well, you know, I have to say, putting rail workers on the dole is wrong for the passengers, wrong for the industry, and you know what, won't help our economy in this double-dipper recession. But that's what the command paper, the son of McNulty, is about to do, and that's what's before Parliament, and that's what we're fighting. We don't believe also this spin that they've been putting on the command paper and McNulty, that it's going to reduce fares. Don't believe it at all. In the short term, fares will continue to rise in line with inflation. That ain't going to happen immediately. We see how rail companies, we've all seen it, well I've certainly seen it in my neck of the woods, and I come from Watford, I've cut some fares, but at the same time, popular routes, popular times, you see an increase in fares. That ain't going to change. McNulty's not going to sort that out. Command Paper's not going to sort that out. They'll still do that because they want to make money to pass on to the private shareholders. That's what it's all about, to make profits. Train companies will continue to increase the peak time. You've seen another little ruse, haven't you? You know, peak time used to be 2 hours, then it was 2.5 hours, now it's 3 hours. And why have they done that? Well, by doing so, if you increase the peak time, the time when you travel, you increase the fares that they can charge during that as peak time fares. You're going to see that as another little ruse, and we've already seen it happening. Again, McNulty, the Command Paper, is saying, well, we're going to cut fares. That ain't going to be the experience in our view. Definitely not going to be the experience. Because what's going on, we don't think fares are going to go down as a result of their plans. We just think fares are going to go on and on, go up, and what's going to happen is that the government and the private operators are going to divvy it up. Whatever gain they make out of it is going to be divvied up. It's not going to be passed on to the passenger. Definitely not in our view. And you know what? That's exactly what we've seen. Right now, in London Midland. I know Ken might cover it a bit more later on, and I'm not trying to set him up, but the trains, you're quiet at the back there, Ken, so I thought I'd sort of make sure people knew you were here. As if, but the leaked documents we've seen about London Midland trains, where they're turning around and saying that the government's prepared to accept the closure of 86 out of 90 London Midland ticket offices. And that includes, it's either partial or complete closures. And for that benefit, the company, London Midland, are going to stand to profit by £1.25 million a year. Profit. At the same time, cutting that amount of services out, the passengers are going to suffer, and they're going to throw rail workers on the dole. That's what this is about. This is an early indication of what McNulty's about. And of course, Ken might talk about the campaign we're going to do, and he'll talk about it later on. But the cash for closures, and that's what this is about. And you know, this is just an early start, an early taster of what's happened with going to happen with all the franchises that we're going to see going forward. That, in our view, will threaten passenger safety and security at stations, and will discriminate against people with disabilities. The closures will result in passengers paying more expensive fares, as there will be no staff available to advise on the most appropriate ticket options. I mean, ticket offices, in my view, are very popular. I mean, people want them more open, not more closed, because what they do, you go, you got a face, you deal with someone, not like when you pick up a phone all the time, go on the internet, you pick up and say, I want to go from A to B, what's the best fare? And generally people turn around and give you the best fare. I'll give you advice about all the other added value about while you're on a journey, what trains are best to catch, what ones to avoid. That's going to go. So the service to the passengers is going to go, but the profits to the private companies are going to go up. Now, we as joint trade unions and the RMTs at the forefront of the campaign, but us, ASLEF, TSSA, Unite, the rail unions, are opposed. We're opposed to McNulty, and we got off our blocks when the report was issued last year, and we started the campaign. And this month we're going to be reinvigorating that campaign. But last year we had a situation when we saw McNulty coming up, where we warned what was going to happen. And it's starting to emerge what's happening, what our worst fear is. Called scaremongers last year. This year, we're actually, unfortunately, been proven to be right. But this current campaign on London Midland, so far we've got 18,000 people, including passengers and disability groups and local transport authority, actually opposing what's going on. So who's right and who's wrong now? Who's scaremongering now? The government and the Secretary of State have to and must reverse this change. I'm pleased to see, and I've got copies of this that I've been asked to hand out tonight, so if you want to take them, get them around tonight. Early day motion 134, been signed by Frank Dobson and two RMT sponsored MPs. Frank used to be sponsored, by the way, good bloke Frank. Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonald, our convener, actually opposing the cuts on London Midland ticket offices. It's only just come out, and we're hoping that it will get more and more support as it goes along. Because last year, when we had the mass rally, as I alluded to earlier on, the lobby of Parliament, with our sister trade unions, we had a large number of days of leafleting at stations. We had managed to achieve over 8,000 postcards returned to MPs, significant amount. We managed to get an early day motion supported by over 100 MPs. So you can have an effect, and you must, if you can, sign these postcards, get them back to your MPs, encourage them to sign the early day motion to protect the booking offices and the stations on London Midland. Because this won't end here, and it's only the start. That is quite clear in our mind. As I alluded earlier on, we are sort of kick-starting again the campaign against McNulty, or as it is now, the command paper. Because that's where it's in. It's in Parliament. The government have released its command paper. So we are holding meetings up and down the country. And there's a number of this tonight, there's a number of next week, and can I praise the Trades Council movement for helping us as a union and as a joint campaign to facilitate the meetings, to get the message across, because we want to broaden it as wide as we can. We plan to monitor what goes on with the franchise tenders, because this government is looking at actually refranchising all the train operating companies to get rid of the restrictive, as they feel it, current franchise agreements, and give these operators, the gold-plated one, the licence to print money. And we're going to be on their backs. These cards that you've seen for London Midland, we're going to replicate for every franchise once we know how they've been announced, so we can turn around and alert the travelling public to the consequences of what the franchise means for them in reality. Because that's where, at the end of the day, we'll win the hearts and minds and maximise our opposition. But on Monday, the TUC and us as rail unions are going to be launching the Action for Rail campaign, People Before Profit. We're going to have a major launch, and that's going to be the kickstart for identifying to the travelling public and a wider spectrum across the country what's going on and what the dangers of the now command paper is, what the command paper is doing. There's going to be a Transport Select Committee where we're going to get involved and be part of the inquiry into it. The union is constantly, as trade unions are constantly lobbying the Secretary of State, and we've got more meetings scheduled. So we're doing a number of things, and I'm going to come to a point where it's not what we do. You know, I'm not going to quote John F. Kennedy, but it's what ye do, what we can do out there to actually turn the tables on the command paper and on this Tory-led government. We're going to commission reports and publish research, because you just can't say you're against something because you don't like it. You've got to have the arguments, and we have done so. And we've done a superb submission to the Transport Committee, identifying what our concerns about and costing some of these issues. We're going to do a wide range of stuff to actually get a point across that where we are today, we don't need to be. Because, you know, one of the things about rail privatisation, one of the things that we've researched and found out is that actually the cost of rail privatisation is somewhere in the region of £1.2 billion a year. That if you turn round and got rid of the profit motives, the profit to shareholders, the transaction costs, the financial costs of Network Rail, you could save somewhere in the region of £1.2 million. You don't need McNulty, you don't need a command paper, you just need to reverse privatisation. I mean, that's one of the arguments we're going to have to put in this campaign, because there is actually an alternative. So at this stage, you know, we as a trade union, the joint trade unions, the trade union movement, passengers and the community groups have got to get together to stop and join a proper campaign opposing the command paper. You can do it, and you know, one of the reasons I'm here tonight is to advertise what we can do and why we should do it. Because we're going to be making it easy to, you can give us your details, you can join our database, you can see that we've already collected quite a few thousand people. We're going to have a database so we can maintain contact, we can keep going forward on a proper organisation. You can contact your local MP, your local train company to compose the cuts, because that's what we should be doing. We should be getting in their faces, don't cut our trains, don't cut our staff. You can write to local papers, because it isn't just about what we do. It's not about just leafleting, it's about what we all can endeavour to do that's going to make or break this campaign. We have done the postcards, we want them as widely distributed as possible. And we're also going to be launching, I think on Monday, a particular website, a bespoke website, actionforrail.org, which is going to be around spreading our message. I've seen, because I'm on Facebook and I get the alerts, a load of alerts from RMT activists and other trade union activists up and down the country, alerting them to via Facebook to the campaign on opposing the command paper. We're going to be using those routes as well. So it's not just about who attends meetings on a Thursday night warm when we all should be down in the pub down the road drinking it, because I'm sweating about the rest of you. But it is. We're not just going to rely on that. We're going to rely on on Facebook, on Twitter, on the webs, on what happens in the communities, and on what actually happens at stations, because that's crucial. Because that's the only way we're going to stop where we are. I did say we've got to talk about the alternative and why we're doing this. McNulty, the command paper, this current government are just going to take us back. But we do have an alternative. We should be looking forward. And do you know what we want? Well, what we want is a safe railway, run in the public interest, which is cost effective, where service is put before profit. That's what we're about. Nobody can disagree with that. That's where we should be today. That's what a value for money review should have delivered. But it hasn't. So our objective is to stop the command paper, is to oppose it and stop it in its tracks. But our ultimate aim should be to create an integrated national rail network which is publicly owned, really publicly owned. Defeating McNulty, in my view, stopping the government command paper is an important step in that objective. And we need to realise that. Because it's not just about, well, we've got a report, we don't like what the outcome is, and we all know it's difficult times and whatnot, and we know what the consequences are. Because I firmly believe, and I don't get up and say what I don't firmly believe, the things I've said to here, we're in real danger of seeing. But it is also about saying we do need a properly run, safe, publicly owned network. We haven't got one today. We ain't going to get it through the command paper. But I tell you what, if we don't stop the command paper, the road to achieving that is going to get a lot harder. So can I thank the Trades Council for organising the meeting tonight. I believe that we will succeed if all the efforts we can put into it are put into it in stopping this in the track. And the first objective's got to be, the first test is actually going to be what we're going to do on the Midland ticket offices. Already the early day motion's there, and already we're putting and have embarrassed in Parliament, and Maria Eagles embarrassed the Secretary of State. So if we can defeat them on that, then that's a great start for the national campaign against stopping McNulty and his son, the command paper. Thanks very much.